Alright, so we're continuing with this last example from section 6.9. So you'll remember that I've got my initial tableau sitting over here. Let's see, maybe I'll use the highlighter. I guess that's not going to work. How about a blue? So this is my initial tableau here. And then this was my final tableau. Ooh, I've got some funky stuff going on there. Let's go back to white. So we are using the dual to help us with our sensitivity analysis. Okay, so the first thing we changed was we changed this 5 to 5 plus delta, and then we saw that delta was less than or equal to 1. So as long as our change is less than or equal to 1, then so this could be from 4 to 6. My current basis remains feasible, or remains optimal. So now we'd like to change some other things about this problem. And so the next thing we want to change is a column corresponding to a non-basic variable. So we only have one column, and that's this one. So how about if I change that column from 3, 2 to something like, let's change all kinds of things. So the current column for x2 is minus 5 with a 3 and a 2, right? Kind of think of that as my column. And how about if I change that to a minus 2 and a 2, let's see, where am I? I just lost my place, 1, 1. What does that do to my problem? And so the question, one way to think about it is, what does this do? What does this change in the dual? Change in the dual. Because all it really does is just changes our constraint, right? So the constraint changes to what? Well, we want to see if y1 plus y2 is greater than or equal to 2. Good. Now, what is y1 and y2? We can go ahead and see if this constraint is satisfied. From our tableaus up here, I see y1 is equal to 0 and y2 is equal to 3. So y1 equals 0, y2 equals 3, and so we see that this is satisfied. Right? And so what does that mean in terms of our current basis? Using this column for x2 keeps the current basis optimal. Good, so we don't have any change. All right. So one way to think about this column as well is it's telling us the column for x2 is telling us how much of the resources x2 is taking up. In other words, what it's costing us to produce. So what I'm thinking of is, suppose that we have our original constraint for the dual. For the dual for x2. And so I'm going back to the original column for x2. And so that said that 3y1 plus 2y2 is greater than or equal to some c2. Notice that I can figure out what the value of c2 would be before I would bring this, before this constraint is not satisfied, right? So using y1 equals 0 and y2 equals 3, we see that this constraint becomes 3 times 0 plus 2 times 3, which is 6. So what this means is that if c2 were equal to 6 or above, right, then x2 would come in to the optimal basis. Okay, so what we think of is that $6 then is the uh, is kind of the cost for X2. It's what we need to sell, or what we need to bring in for X2 in order to have X2 be produced. So if I sell X2 for any less than $6, right, then X2 it wouldn't be worth it for us to produce X2. Okay. Along the same idea of using a column like this, we could just say, well, what happens if I have a brand new column? What happens if I want to add, oops, sorry about that. What happens if I want to add a new activity? So maybe X3, I guess we would call it. And suppose that the column for X3 looks something like -422. So the -4 is in row 0, right? And then I've got 22 for my um, for my let me rewrite that. 22. What was I saying for my resources? That's what I'm trying to say. And so, what does the constraint in the dual look like? Well, it would be 2y1 plus 2y2 is greater than or equal to 4, right? And so, does our current basis satisfy this? Oops, current basis is y1 equals 0 and y2 equals 3. So if we put that in, that's equal to 6. So 6 is greater than or equal to 4. So yes, the current basis is still satisfied. And so what does that mean? Let's talk about that in terms of this new activity. Should I perform this new activity, or should I produce anything in X3? No, because the current basis is satisfied. Current basis does not include X3, so don't produce it. Don't produce this. Right? Good. And so you can see that I think we've covered all 3 of our cases now. Let's go back to the beginning. Oops, I don't know if I listed them here. If we change a column corresponding to a non-basic variable, if we add a new column, whoops, sorry about that, or if we add a new column to the primal. Good, I think we have covered everything. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3. Good. That's it for 6. What section are we in? 6.9. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to have a video that just has a bunch of examples for you to look at, and we're going to try to get a new set of theory to help us construct the sensitivity analysis from the primal or the dual. Okay, that's coming up in 6.10. See you then.